In a relationship, when is honesty not the best policy? How do you balance what you want versus what you need? And is there something you need to say to your spouse, but can't find the right way to say it? If so, then you're in the right place. This is the Lunch with Sandy podcast. With nearly 20 years of marriage under their belts, Terrence and Sandy Jackson discuss a range of topics, provide valuable insights on relationships, and talk about the conversations married couples need to have. So what does lunch have to do with all of this? Well, it's a metaphor for how these conversations originally started. Speaking of conversations, let's get one going. Here's your hosts, Terrence and Sandy.
Welcome to another episode of the Lunch with Sandy podcast, where we delve into various topics and offer insights from the perspective of a married couple. I'm Terrence.
And I'm Sandy.
And today we're going to be discussing the hidden meaning behind some of the communication practices that Sandy has. But first, please be sure to follow the Lunch with Sandy podcast on your favorite podcasting app. And you can also follow us on all social media at Lunch with Sandy. Speaking of Sandy, she's here with me.
Present.
Goodness. What's going on?
Not much. I don't know if our listeners can tell our voices. Well, in our voices, because we had a late night last night and probably shouting over music. I feel like our voices, both of us, are really hoarse.
Listen, speak for yourself. I am too. Listen, it was a late night last night, but all in good fun.
Yes.
Ayla's still upstairs sleeping. She's gonna have to get up soon.
I know.
We got places to be. Not gonna be out as late as it was last night.
Oh, definitely not. I can't do 2 nights in a row.
Not like that.
No.
Not like that. So, we've had ad nauseum a number of conversations or spoken about how effective communication is essential for any relationship. And it's important to remember that, typically in a relationship, there are 2 forms or 2 ways of communicating. Mm-hmm. And by that, what I mean is there's the verbal and then there's the nonverbal. So it's important to be able to not only understand, the verbal cues your partner may be putting out, but you also need to understand or learn those nonverbal cues that sometimes can put you in a situation that you need to actually be aware of. Uh-huh. So let's tackle this basically from, both those perspectives. And we'll start with,
what does Sandy do?
Well, we're going to get into that. We ain't there yet, but we're going to get into that. But, communication, when you're talking about it from the verbal perspective, normally seems pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. Well, let me rephrase that. It is supposed to be straightforward. But, everyone has their own way of communicating and everyone is different. So sometimes what is said is what is not meant.
Those underlying intentions.
Sometimes I often wonder, particularly with Sandy, if she knows what it is that she's trying to say. But
probably only like 45% of the time.
So I'm glad you said that, because my first question to you was going to be this. Uh-huh. Do you think you always say what you mean? You're taking way too long to answer that, because
I feel like it also kind of depends on context. Like the setting that we are in, the context, if I always say what I mean.
I don't even know where to go. I don't need. So I guess I understand that.
I can provide an example.
Go ahead.
That makes it easier. So if we're talking, right, like, and you need me to help you make a decision or whatever, like, hey, I was thinking about doing this, or what do you think about this instead? And I'll say like, oh, whatever you want. You know what I mean? I literally mean whatever you want. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me. But, if we're discussing and maybe not seeing eye to eye on something, and it's, I don't want to say arguing because, we don't argue much, but, well, actually, I guess we don't fight much, but we do disagree. That's a better term.
I'd have to agree to disagree.
Yeah. So if we're just disagreeing and we're not seeing eye to eye, and I'm like, "Oh, whatever you want." Like, that's me giving up. You know what I mean? So so I feel like context in the situation is very key. So, in the second situation, I'm saying whatever you want, but to me, it's not. I just give up is really what my underlying meaning is.
So the basis is sometimes you have to have your secret decoder ring to actually decode
Yes.
what actually is being said.
Right,
In a lot of cases where people say whatever you want, they don't really mean whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where if someone says whatever you want, they're just saying, eh.
So right, and so I feel like the majority of the time when I say whatever you want, I literally mean, sure, whatever you want. But if it's a situation where we're not seeing eye to eye, or this is causing disagreement, my whatever you want, so maybe that 5% means I give up.
5%. Listen, I think that when we start talking about verbal communication, men and women are different in a lot of ways. And again, everyone is different. But I think from the male perspective, or at least from me, my communication is very direct. And by that, what I mean is if I say something, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that particularly with you, most of the time that's the case. Well, let me take a step back. Some of the time that's the case because sometimes you say some things and I don't even know if you know what you mean when you say it. But there's also the aspect of like, if I ask you something or if I ask for your input on something, you do this thing where I always interpret it and I know what the answer is. If I ask you something and you don't respond, then the answer is no. I take that as a no all the time.
But that's not accurate, though.
It might not be accurate, but at the same time, we've had this conversation a number of times, and I told you that when you don't respond, to me, that's a response, and I take that as a no.
Right. And so I have clarified with you that it does not mean no. It means I'm working out things in my own brain. I haven't really come to a decision if I don't say anything. But at the same time, I have also said, I'll try to give you some verbal communication.
Yes, so you got to start doing that. Because I know you say it doesn't mean no.
Right.
But at the same time, it continues to happen. And
so in my defense, I'm a very internal person. Like I talk to myself often. I'm always working things out in my brain. I don't know, when I never really grew up talking about my feelings and talking through things. So that outward verbal communication it doesn't come easy to me.
I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to help you with that. Here's what you say. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know. Simple and sweet. Right. But
I'll get back to you on that.
But to me, it's like my brain just starts automatically thinking. Do you know what I mean? And then it's not intentional. I honestly just forget to say, okay, I'll get back to you.
I think that there are some common phrases, and I don't know if it's because over time so many people have used them. Mm-hmm. And when I'm saying people right now, I'm talking about women. I think there's some common phrases that when men hear women say something, the meaning behind what they're saying isn't the same. Like for instance, if I ask you something and you say maybe's no.
Okay.
Or maybe's a no. Or here's the big one. The big one is if I ask you, is everything okay? And you say it's fine.
I think that's a specific one again for the context of the situation.
Granted, context does play a role in that, but for the most part, I would say the overall, if you were to poll people overall, men overall, they would say, oh, if she says she's fine, she ain't fine. She's pissed. She's pissed. That and...
Right, like, am I avoiding you? And then you come ask me, is everything okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, yeah, that's probably...
Yeah, well... That
does not mean I'm fine.
Yeah, context is important. And I think there's one or two questions that women ask they're asked the question, but it's not really the question that they want to ask, or it's just asking the question for some form of confirmation. And it's always this one. And it's this when we did the episode about honest communication. Stop asking guys, does this make me look fat?
So I don't ask that, but I do ask, how do I look?
Yes, yeah.
And it could mean either way. It could be like, I'm indecisive about this outfit.
You're indecisive about a lot of things, but go ahead.
So, thanks, honey. Or like, I'm fishing for a compliment.
and that's the other thing.
So one of the two. You can honestly, you can just put, like any Webster dictionary, definition 1, definition 2. So, okay, first, is it Sandy is indecisive? Like, let me maybe ask some questions to get to that answer. Okay, no, she's not indecisive. She's just looking for a compliment.
But here's the difference when we communicate.
Sandy, you look wonderful.
Yes, because you know me, I'm very literal. And I tell you all the time, you look fine. You got to wear what you like.
But yeah, I like to wear what I like on me that you like too.
Unfortunately,
like
for
I wouldn't
you,
have bought it if I didn't like it. So
I don't. That's again. That's not. We're not. That's a different episode. That's not always the case. I do think there are a lot of things that you buy just because you might see it in the moment and you're not decisive about it, and you decide to actually get it. And then once you have it, you have it. And then when it comes time to actually put it on, then that's when you're indecisive and you got to decide whether or not you like it.
I've gotten a lot better at that. That's why I really need to upgrade my closet wardrobe, because I'm so bad at just shopping, and I try not to just buy stuff just to buy it anymore.
Yeah. One last statement, or one last piece when we start talking about the verbal communication, and this is not just for you, but I'm gonna attach it to you because you do this a lot.
Please, let me know.
I just need 10 minutes. That's not true.
Oh, for getting ready.
That's not true. It's never 10 minutes.
I don't know. Yesterday I did pretty good. I said, I'll be ready by the time you get home. And
no.
I was.
Oh, you're talking about when I got back from the Western. Yeah, well, you weren't ready because Jax you hadn't taken the dog out to use the bathroom.
I didn't realize he needed to go out.
I mean, you didn't realize you were leaving the house for.
Well, I was in the shower gone for 6 hours. And stuff. I thought maybe you had already did that.
No, because you sent me to go pick up the food.
But before that,
which you could have asked. You didn't communicate.
Neither did you. You could have texted me like, "Hey, while I'm gone, take Jax out." See, it goes both ways.
Doesn't go both ways, because you know what? You have a dog just like I have a dog. And you're leaving the house. You should be, you know what? Let me just take him out. Even if I took him out, let me just take him out so he goes to the bathroom.
Okay, whatever you want.
There you go. There you go.
But, the maybe, I feel like the maybe, I don't use the maybe on you. I use the maybe on the kids.
Yeah, no,
when they were growing up all the time. And that was because it didn't mean no. It's because I'm not going to answer this question without daddy.
Again, now let's talk about using the decoder ring. Uh-huh. So rather than maybe, you know what? I have to have a conversation with someone. Yeah. So let me get back to you.
Which is funny because I have gotten more into the habit of doing that with Ayla. She asked me a question last night. For the life of me, I can't even remember what it was. And I said, I remember what it is now. But anyhow, I was like, that's a question to ask to Daddy and I together. So it wasn't a maybe. It was bring it up when we're together.
And that's how it should be. So I mentioned earlier that there are two ways we communicate. We talked a little bit about the verbal communication. So I want to hit on the nonverbal aspect for a minute. But just like the verbal cues, nonverbal cues, well, actually, even more so than the verbal cues, nonverbal cues have to be decoded.
Yes.
There are some that are pretty straightforward when you talk about, okay, well, this person is doing that,
I'm
and you know
sure
what they
I know mine, yeah.
Well, wait, listen, so what are some nonverbal cues that you regularly use?
So again, it's like context is everything in this conversation, I feel like. So if we're having a conversation, right? And it's not like you just ask me a question and I go silent because, my brain is trying to like work itself out. If we're either disagreeing something or we're trying to like work through something and I go silent, then that probably just means like I need to step away from this conversation. And if I do go silent and walk away, that means I really need to get out of this conversation. The walking away means like I need 10 minutes, but not those kind of 10 minutes to get ready.
And it's not 10 minutes.
It depends.
It's normally a lot more than 10 minutes. Yeah. So, you know me, I just stop talking.
Yes.
I don't walk away.
Yeah.
Non-communicate.
You just get the one word answers.
Yep. Very minimal conversation.
What do you want for dinner? I don't care.
No, it's chicken. The answer to that is always chicken. There are some things that, there's some straightforward nonverbal communications that are easy to pick up. Mm-hmm. Like if you're sitting here with your arms crossed and you got a screw face on.
So my arms crossed do not mean anything, but I'm cold.
But there was an added piece to that. I said you had a screw face on. It means your face is mad. You have an angry face.
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes you think I have a screw face on, and I'm just in my own head again.
Fix your face.
I'll fix my face.
Listen.
You all heard it here first. Fix your face.
Listen, I know when you're in your head because you do this thing when you with your lips when you're in your head when you're thinking. You do. That's part of your nonverbal communication. When you do this, you're thinking.
Well, that's good to know that I do that.
You do it all the time.
Ayla says I just start staring, and she thinks I'm staring at her.
Because you'll be looking
but I'm
directly
not.
at her.
I'm like, but I am not looking. But it's funny because I'm not seeing her. Like I'm not actually looking at her. My mind has kind of gone elsewhere. I'm just like thinking, and I'm just my eyes are looking in one direction, but I don't see anything that's actually in front of me.
Yeah. There's some nonverbal stuff that you do that's not
Sandyland.
easy to actually decode. But, like I said, the staring. I don't know what you're doing when you're staring.
If I'm staring at you, it's because I'm not staring at you.
Yeah. But there's some typical ones, and this is not necessarily you, but, when people avoid others. Like I said, facial expressions, you can tell a lot from the facial expressions, body language, things like that. And I think it comes down to you have to know who it is you're in a relationship with. You got to learn those things from your partners, and that happens, over time. But you got to learn them because if you don't, you're going to end up putting yourself in a situation where, you can be in a whole lot of hot water.
Without even knowing.
Yeah. Yep. Like I said, it takes time for you to actually come to learn those things. So the question becomes, how do you get to that point, right? How do you get to a point where you've come to know what it is that your partner is trying to relay when they ain't saying?
I feel like practice makes perfect. I think over time, if you're paying attention to your partner, you are going to automatically learn some of those things.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but I think it's important to be, open and honest when communicating.
Yeah.
Because you may look at, or you may take a nonverbal cue or something that your partner says and completely misinterpret it. Mm-hmm. And that can be an issue. But if you have that open and honest communication, you can have a conversation about it. And then when you have the conversation about it, then you can get to the root of the issue if there is one, or understand that this is just me.
And I think the other thing is don't assume that your partner has picked up on those. Like, I can't believe he doesn't realize how upset I am or something. I think that's something that we've worked on too, where if I do walk away or whatnot, I'll, once I calm down and my emotion is out of it, because I feel like that when you try to talk through things and emotion is still in it, that sometimes it'll just precipitate another argument. But I'll be like, you really upset me when you said blank.
Yeah.
And
I'll say, huh? What? I didn't say that. No, I think it's important too, just based off that, you got to be empathetic to each other. You got to be able to put yourself in each other's shoes. And that way you can understand what that person may or may not be feeling at that particular time. Yeah.
And how really important is it? I feel like now, as years have passed, I look back and I'm like, you know what? It's not even important anymore.
You talking about learning communication ain't
No,
important?
not communication, but like something that we might be disagreeing on or whatnot. It's like, in the whole scheme of things, is it really that important? And I'm thinking like, no, it's not. Like we spent, time disagreeing about, I don't know, X. I can't really think of anything specific at this moment in time, but it's like, wow, at the end of the day, it's like as long as you're invested in each other, it ends up all working out anyways.
Yeah, I think based on what I said earlier too, with, having that open and honest communication, part of the way that you get there is building trust with each other. So you have that openness. And once you have that trust too, when you start talking about different situations, if you trust that your partner wouldn't intentionally put you in a situation where you feel whatever way that it is that you actually feel, then you have that to lean back or to pull back and say, hey, listen, maybe I need to look at this from a different perspective. Maybe I need to have a conversation. Maybe I might be in my own head and I need to take 10 minutes, which is normally not 10 minutes, to go work that out and then come back and see what the situation really is.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I feel like maybe in the past I would take certain commentary like you're purposely trying to hurt my feelings, and I've come to recognize that that's not the intention, because I do trust you and I know that you're not purposely trying to hurt my feelings. Like, this chicken tastes horrible.
And that's just me being
because,
honest.
Like, to you, the chicken tastes horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's not anything to do with, my skills as a cook. It really, something happened with that chicken today that it just did not come out right.
Yeah. Listen, and so for me, again, when it comes to communicating, I'm very direct. And if the chicken tastes horrible, I feel it's part of my duty to let you know, hey, listen, this chicken don't taste good. This chicken is horrible.
Yeah, I know. And it's, it's just like anything else. And I know we've talked about it in a past episode, but you kind of bring that baggage with you from, prior situations. And sometimes, it just takes the time to know that, to trust the person and know that it's just you being direct and you're not trying to be hurtful.
Yeah. And I think at the same time too, I think you have to be able to listen and observe your partner, because sometimes things are going to be said that aren't said.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't make any sense.
If I slaved over the stove for 2 hours and then you're like, the chicken is horrible, like, at least appreciate the time that I spent freaking making the damn chicken.
Listen, I appreciate the time you put into this chicken, but this shit is horrible.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, I always, again, it's not always said, but I always appreciate the effort that you put in. But at the same time, I think it's important to, be mindful of the fact that even though when you're communicating directly, not everyone also communicates that way. So when you do that, you can have a negative impact on the person who you're communicating with.
True.
It's not that I don't appreciate you making the nasty chicken. It's just nasty.
And I feel like I've learned through my life who those people are that are just direct.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to intentionally hurt somebody's feelings. They're just calling it like it is.
Yeah. When you're in a relationship, to make sure or to get to where you're trying to go together, communication is very, very important. And I think that there are certain things that you should have a strategy or a plan for when you're talking about how you're going to communicate, right? Because you get involved with someone and now you see this plan or this path that lays out in front of you, right?
Okay.
Maybe you plan on getting married or being lifelong partners or however you want to call it. Finances are going to come into the picture. Now you start talking about money, things can get a little iffy. So how are you going to communicate with each other when you start talking about the finances? You may want to have, or you may want to build a family. You got to have that communication, and it has to be clear, because if one person wants kids and the other person doesn't want kids and they don't know how to effectively communicate that, you might be going down a path where you think someone may be on the same page with you and they may not be.
Yeah.
The other, there's just a whole bunch of other stuff that comes along with, okay, well, you move in together. So if you can have a plan for how you're going to communicate when you start talking about those things, and I think the first part of that plan is actually talking about those things.
So I think first of all, you don't start the conversation as we need to talk.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So, you know what? And the thing with that is too. So
because that's just gonna automatically walls
what?
are up instantaneously. Everybody's defensive.
It's so funny that you said that, because going back to verbal, the verbal aspect, there's a different meaning behind when you say we need to talk. Everyone knows what that means when you say we need to talk. All right, that's it. Something's over.
Right? Like, all right, this is going to be right. Or this is going to be an argument already.
Yeah.
So hence, walls are up, defenses are up. Like, there's really no, there's going to be nothing good that I feel like is going to come out of that conversation if you start with that tagline.
Yep. So you have to remove that phrase from your vocabulary.
Well, and this is where I find it difficult, and it would be nice to have the perspective of more of a newer couple, because I feel like we've been together so long. Like, I don't even remember how we initiated those conversations. Like, how do you do that in today's age? I'm not sure, but I think it's like you said, kind of just communicating and almost like preparing. Like, I think we need to have maybe some difficult conversations. So let's relax ourselves. Let's go in the hot tub with a drink. You know what I mean? And kind of set the mood as we decide to have these difficult conversations.
I would just take the word difficult out there. It's like, you know what? There's some things we probably should discuss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
let's go in the hot tub with a drink.
I think regardless of how long you've been together, I think the simplest approach is, these things exist.
Yeah.
Right? Or these things are going to happen, or these things are going to come about. You start having conversations about, okay, well, how are we going to do A if B happens? Yeah. And I think it's important for everyone to start having those conversations as soon as you start to get serious. I mean, you don't want to meet somebody, the first day and be like, oh, listen, so, I want to have a baby, so we got to start planning this out. No.
Right.
I mean, that may work for some people, but some other people, you're probably going to send them running out of the room.
I'm 25 and I want to have a baby by the time I'm 28. So what are your intentions here?
That's a woman thing. When I say that's a woman thing, I mean that's something that I've heard women say. Not that guys don't want that, but I never hear a guy actually speak it.
Well, because guys can have kids no matter what age they are. Women
sometimes
have the more medical behind it.
Well, no, and what I mean is, I'm not saying that guys don't have those same feelings. Yeah, they don't verbalize it. Again, I think that's one area where women are more direct.
Yeah, well, I think it's honestly because of the underlying knowledge of the body mechanics of it all. You know what I mean? No, but
no, I get it. The underlying body mechanics.
I don't know how else to kind of describe it, but women, we feel like we're on a clock to some degree, right? Like, hey, at some point we run out.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel in those cases women are more direct, but at the same time, I start thinking about, okay, well, research has shown that when women communicate, they're not as direct because there's so many different aspects of what they're thinking when they're actually having those conversations.
Yeah. Or, it's funny because, you're right. It could just be a type A personality that has their whole life planned out. Like, okay, by 28, I'm having a kid, and by 32, I'm doing this. And, some people have
Were you like that?
No.
32? I like how you did the thing with your hand. At 32?
No, but I did kind of have like a little mini quarter life crisis, I feel like, at 25. But other than that.
It's funny because, we'll sit here and talk about how women communicate, how men communicate, verbally, non-verbally. And again, everybody's different.
Yeah, it's really not a women and men thing, but I feel like you're right. It tends to be the majority that at least we've come in contact with tend to fall under these categories. But yeah, well, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Like there's a whole book about it.
Yeah, well, as time goes on, I think communication is only going to get harder because, we talk about verbal communication. I think that's going to be a lost art eventually.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way that so many people in the digital age right now communicate, a lot of it is through social media apps or text. And the thing with those things is you can't always capture context.
No, you can't.
In those things.
I realize that I come off very, I don't even know what the right word is, but maybe hurtful, but not, I'm not trying to be.
In your text? Yeah.
I feel like, because I don't know why, but I guess because I'm because I actually have the chance, I guess, to think about the words that I'm using, and it's not what would be in my natural conversation, that people take it as harsher than it's really intended as. You know what I mean?
I don't have that issue, and I'll tell you why. I am a face-to-face communicator.
Yeah, same.
I don't use, at work, I seldom use the phone. I have people who work for me who are 20 feet away from me that will send me a message in Teams as opposed to come and ask me a question or to give me that information. Yeah. Not me. When they say, it's funny, like someone will reach out to me in Teams and I'll just lean over and start yelling, "Hey, no, we don't want to do that."
No, I'm more of a face-to-face person too. And so hence when I think I try to take it, there's been a few occasions I'll say I've taken it to written word and it never ends up working out right. It never ends up working out the way that it's intended. And I feel like I always end up hurting somebody's feelings, again, which is not intentional. And then I'm apologizing for hurting their feelings, that's not what was intended.
But they decoded it that way. When you go and you have a conversation with someone and you can look them in the eye and you can see their facial expressions, you get all those cues, because some of that stuff is, it's nonverbal. You're communicating verbally, but those nonverbal cues that you pick up on is going to give you an indication about how they're receiving what it is that you're actually saying.
Yep.
As we wrap up, remember that communication is a two-way street. It's not just about speaking. It's about truly listening and understanding. Each one of us brings our own unique communication style to the table, and it's our job to learn and appreciate those differences. So whether it's deciphering the unspoken words conveyed through body language or fostering empathy and trust to facilitate open dialogue, let's commit to understanding each other better. Let's create spaces where honesty thrives, trust blossoms, and communication becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. Thank you for joining us on the Lunch with Sandy podcast. Please be sure to follow us and leave feedback on your favorite podcasting app. Until next time, stay well.
That's it for this week's episode of the Lunch with Sandy podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback and comments on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Lunch with Sandy. And be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us. Thanks again for listening to the Lunch with Sandy podcast.